Welcome to Navigating Advocacy, the true crime podcast that goes beyond storytelling to ignite change and seek justice. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney. As true crime enthusiasts turned passionate advocates, we've seen the power of storytelling raise awareness about unsolved crimes and bring hope to victims and their families. We hope to inspire action and promote positive change within the true crime community.
Our mission is simple. We provide a platform for victims and their families to share their stories, to be heard, and find solidarity. But we don't stop there. We offer practical guidance to our listeners on how they can actively make a difference in their own communities.
Together, we can create a wave of change. We're here to empower you to also become advocates for change, no matter where or who you are. We are Navigating Advocacy.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday and Merry Christmas.
Yes, I literally almost forgot to say happy Monday because of all of the other recordings that we've been doing. We don't start it off that way. And I was like, oh crap, I'm supposed to say something specific right here. So glad I remembered.
Yep.
Yes, and Merry Christmas to all those that celebrate. Otherwise, happy Monday and day off for the rest of America.
Right. Or whatever holiday you choose to celebrate. Happy holidays to you.
Exactly.
Well, this one is Melissa's case, but she kind of gave me a little bit of a rundown on it. And it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, but we wanted to make it kind of short and sweet so that you can get back to your holiday celebrations.
Yes. It's a little bit shorter, but this one came as a recommendation from a listener. I'm not sure if it was the family or another listener that sent this in. So I wanted to cover it for Georgia. But yeah, it is on the shorter side. There's not a lot of details. Well, there's zero details about how this man died and that kind of thing. But as we get into it, it does seem suspicious to say the least.
Yes.
So let's jump right in. East Dublin, Georgia, is a city located in Lawrence County. It is situated to the east of the city of Dublin. I actually had to Google, is East Dublin its own town, or do they just say, oh, that's East Dublin because it's on the east side of Dublin? It is a separate town, but it is on the east side of Dublin as well. So,
Interesting.
Yeah. Like many communities in this region, East Dublin has historical ties to agriculture, mainly cotton and lumber. Over the years, the local economy has diversified to include various industries. East Dublin is known for its community-oriented atmosphere. Residents often engage in local events, and the area may have its own community organizations and initiatives. The town has just under 2,500 residents. It is rated a 34 out of 100 on Neighborhood Scout, with 100 being the safest. So I will take a 34. And back in the day, I would think a 34 is not that great. If we're talking about percentages of our kids' homework assignments, 34, you better get it together. But it seems 34 is good.
That it's one of the higher numbers we've ever come across. Have we come across 100 or like 90s? I don't think we've done anything over 50.
No, I think
Have we
80s.
done it over 50?
No, I think we've had 80s.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember where, but I just remember one being in the 80s. But it's typical that we have single digits when it comes to the safety rating. So very excited about East Dublin being somewhat safe. Brian Samples was born on July 17th of 1976. And every time I look at this date, I literally just think about the birth of America. Because it's in July, but it's 1976, obviously.
Right. It's a few hundred years later.
Yes. He was born to parents Alvin and Patsy Samples. The family was a blended one with 9 kids in total. So it was a loud house with lots of laughter. Brian was described as an outgoing person who loved to make others laugh, always the life of the party. He was His life was not without struggles, though. He had drug dependency issues that he was up against for a large portion of his life. As Brian grew into adulthood, he had three children whom he adored, two daughters and one son. He was a master carpenter and a devout Christian. His family would say that he could build anything. One of his many sisters asked him to build her a deck, and she really wanted this specific type that she saw one of her neighbors have. So her and Brian get in the car, they travel over to the neighbor's house just so he can take a look at it. And without missing a beat, he said, yeah, he could build it, no problem. It wouldn't be until after his passing that she learned this deck was not your typical regular type of deck, but it was very intricate and took many extra skills that a normal deck wouldn't really need. But he never mentioned this to her. He just worked on what his sister wanted and learned these new skills in order to make her the deck of her dreams.
That's so sweet where he's not like, "Sis, you're crazy. I can't do that. How dare you even think of asking me to do this?" But just
Yeah,
figured it out.
it figured it out, didn't even tell her that, "Hey, this is gonna take me double the amount of time. I'm actually gonna need to go buy a couple new tools, probably watch a couple YouTube videos at that." He's just, "I'll get it done." It's their deck still today, but that's the type of person he was. He loved to build, he loved to help out his family, especially doing something he loved like that. His family has millions of these stories. Stories of Brian making them laugh, of Brian singing songs, because yes, he was a musician too. They would say he can turn the most mundane words into beautiful melodies that would make everyone have all the feels. They have quite a few videos of him playing his guitar and singing for the family. I just love that. Brian did spend some time in and out of jail for drugs or probation violations. And in 2019, he ended up in a mandated drug rehabilitation program in the East Dublin area. I did forget to mention that Brian wasn't from East Dublin. He was from Buford, Georgia. It's about a 3-hour drive from Dublin. But this is where he had to go to the rehab center. So that's kind of where he ended up. I've read various reports that stated Brian completed the treatment program and then moved into a local motel. But then I also read a few that said he ended up relapsing and leaving the program. Either way, Brian stayed in the Dublin area and he resided in the Red Carpet Inn motel. He was still doing some carpentry work in the area and ministering to a local nursing home. And that's kind of why he decided not to go back to the Buford area right away. Brian would speak with his family daily, especially his mother. His sister would even say that they would text all day and just send pictures of their grandkids back and forth. Brian had one grandson who was seriously the light of his life. He always said that he wanted to get clean for his grandson. He didn't want to be the way that he was when his children were growing up. And so he found motivation to get clean because of his grandson. Since Brian's passing, he has also had a granddaughter too, that I'm sure he would love just as much. His family's last contact with him was on July 6th, 2019, and everything was pretty much normal. His family has made some vague statements about Brian, saying he had met some shady characters in the few days prior to his disappearance. But nothing that shocked the family at that moment. They said Brian would meet friends with everyone. He did ministry work. He was staying at this motel, so he kind of became friends with the locals, that type of thing. I don't know what he specifically said, but the family was concerned because he had met. And I don't know exactly what he said, but they brought it up later a few different times. Brian's mother was worried right away when he didn't call or text on the 7th. While the rest of the family tried to keep it cool, they knew it was weird that Brian hadn't messaged, but he was also a 43-year-old man, so they tried not to freak out. They would state that no one would be more disappointed than Brian himself if he happened to relapse, and they knew he had done it before. He relapsed, and then he would take a few weeks, feel discouraged, but then eventually reach back out to family. So they tried not to freak out, but they just figured he needed some time. But as the days went on without any contact, they knew something was wrong. And when I tell you that this family rallied together and searched for their loved one, they were literally all hands on deck. They reported him missing to the local authorities, started a Facebook page, and started out and about foot search parties as much as they possibly could in this area. They tried to, and how I said that East Dublin was a community centered town, they took that and ran with it. They joined the Facebook groups. They became friends with the locals, anything that they could do to try to figure out what happened to Brian.
That's amazing. Good for them. We talk all the time about how there's no manual, there's no checklist that families are handed when something like this happens of, okay, yes, join Facebook groups, create a Facebook group, print flyers. And you're still processing the trauma of what's happening, the ability to be able to put that much effort into search efforts immediately. That's great for them.
It turns out Brian never checked out of the Red Carpet Inn, and the motel manager assumed he just skipped out on the bill. So they packed up his belongings and put them in storage. His vehicle was left in the parking lot of the motel as well. His family was adamant something terrible had happened to him, mainly because of what Brian had mentioned about these shady people. And he had also just received a check for a few $1,000s because of some kind of insurance check for a car accident.
Okay.
The family never publicly said anything negative against the police, but just from previous experiences and us doing this research, police don't always search adequately for people with substance abuse issues. I don't know if this was the case or not for Brian, but in October of 2019, so this is about 3 months after Brian went missing, remains were found about a quarter of a mile behind the Red Carpet Inn. This is a heavily wooded area, and the family did search in this area before. They could have just missed this spot. They honestly don't know because this is such a heavily wooded area. That was really their main focus of searching when they were searching for those first few months. But for some reason, they didn't find anything.
That's so close to the motel. What, they didn't use dogs or there's
So
questions?
I know. That was my question about a quarter of a mile. That is very close. If they did use dogs, I feel like they would have found them. Or if law enforcement was involved in the search, and it's not just civilians trying to figure this out. I don't know. That's kind of where they've never said anything negative about the police. I couldn't find anything that the police
Right.
said. Mainly all of the information I received or I have is the family talking about it. So
And not to discount police or anything, but we've also talked about how people and police and professionals can search one area multiple times and on the third, fourth, fifth time actually find something because humans make mistakes. Things are hard to see. In those heavily wooded areas, though, they generally lean on dogs or something smaller than a human to be able to get into all those areas.
agreed. Agreed. It would take an entire month for the remains to be identified positively as Brian Samples. This crushed his large extended family. They also believed without a doubt that this was a homicide. However, police would state that it is a questionable death, but have never ruled it a homicide. They have never released the autopsy, so we do not know the cause of death, the manner of death. We literally know nothing about what the body's condition was, if he was, we know nothing. Absolutely. I can't even imagine what the family is feeling. So, unfortunately, this is where this case stands. And I know this is frustrating. It was frustrating when I was researching it, but just imagine how that family feels.
Is law
I
enforcement saying why they're not releasing the autopsy? Just because are they still considering it an ongoing investigation?
I That's a great question, and neither in all of my research, I literally went year from year since 2019. Absolutely no police statement besides in 2019 when they stated it is a questionable death. They have not said that, "Hey, case closed. This was he committed suicide. Oh, case closed. This was he
So
nature." He's nothing
they've never revealed
about how he died.
what they even classify the case as.
Yep, they have
Hmm.
not at all. I know. This one is crazy frustrating. But since it was sent to us, I was like, well, we're going to dive in, see what we can find. I couldn't just not tell his story. So if you have any information about what happened to Brian Samples in East Dublin, Georgia in July of 2019, please contact the Lawrence County Sheriffs at 478 272 1522. There is a $5,000 reward leading to the arrest of the suspect responsible for Brian's death. And this is one we'll definitely let you know if anything comes up, if they do end up changing it to a homicide. If anything's in the news, I'm actually making a Google notification because, I mean, it's been 3 years. How are we still
4.
left with nothing? Yes, 4 years. And his family, there is a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Brian Samples Missing. They obviously created it when he was missing before they found him. They post regularly, and I'm talking daily, and it's just little snippets, pictures of Brian's kids, anything that's happening in life. They post it. And today they posted, it states, "How do you sleep knowing what you know? Do you see his face when you close your eyes? Do you look over your shoulder for him? Does God wake you in that 3 to 5 a.m. part of the morning because you know what you did was wrong? Come forward. It isn't too late to find peace. Justice for Brian." So
Oh,
his family, they definitely believe someone knows something. And in one thing, they let it slip and it was said something like she was with him, and they just said she. Um, and that kind of piqued my interest a bit. So I think they know more than obviously the public knows, but they're
sure.
keeping that under wraps for the integrity of the investigation. So they
Yeah.
possibly know the manner of death, but has not been released to the public. So definitely, if you know anything, contact those authorities mentioned. We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue traveling state by state seeking justice because we will be there no matter where.
No matter who.